All right, let's get everybody up in here and let's roll. Get ready to hit Monday. All right, let's put this out. $20 challenge. Jesus, man. How? All right, guys. Get out of Discord. Let's get rolling. Got a big week. Big week coming up here. Pretty excited. All right, just going to give it about another 30, 60 seconds. This will be put up. Once it's done, you can go up and play it back. So not worried about waiting too long. Definitely want to dive into things here. As I said, very big week with the whole debt ceiling thing. This is a huge headline to keep an eye on, guys. Okay, definitely want to kick this video off tonight. Just want to dive into that. All right, I think we got a good number here, and people can play it back. So let's just dive right into things. All right. All right, so we got the SPY chart up here. Before I dive into any of the technicals, I want to just brief everyone on kind of what's going on with the debt ceiling debates that are going on in Congress this week. I can't find anything. It looks like actually Monday. Okay, so I just found an article letting me know that Monday the Senate is going to be voting on um, on the debt ceiling. So basically, what's going on here, guys, is with this $3.5 trillion relief bill that the Democrats have put together, it's putting us over our debt ceiling, right? And so basically, if we hit our debt ceiling, the government is no longer able to pay for, they're not no longer able to pay government salaries or any kind of or military budgets or basically any kind of responsibilities that the government has to pay for. They can't pay for it if they hit our debt ceiling, right? And so basically, the way the government pays for all these things is they borrow money from bonds, right? So when we pay for bonds, the government takes that money and the taxes money, right? So those two streams of income for the government, that's what they use to pay for everything. And right now, they're kind of debating in Congress. The Republicans, it's all on the Republicans, right? Which the Democrats slightly outnumber them. But basically, if there's any kind of stalling, which is what's currently happening with the Republicans, but if some of the Democrats join them on that stalling, then we're gonna see quite a battle here, right? Because towards that middle of October area, once all these things start going into effect, if Congress doesn't come to an agreement on extending the debt, or if they don't extend the deadline or increase the debt ceiling, and we could see some pretty catastrophic outcomes, right? We could see just an absurd financial crisis. For those reasons, I don't think it's going to happen, but it is something that what we can do is we can keep an eye on. Does that 3.5, is it billion or trillion? Um, I think it's trillion, right? $3.5 trillion bill from the Democrats, the infrastructure bill, um, you know, $3.5 trillion spending plan, right? So maybe they lower that, maybe that affects the market. But either way, whatever outcome comes from this, it's going to move the market. All right, big money, Wall Street institutions, they're going to be keeping an eye on how this storyline plays out. Okay, and now with that out of the way, let's focus on the technicals here, and then I would love to dive into some charts with you guys. I want to look at the overall market first. So Friday was a pretty low volume day, not a bad day. We still held under that 20-day, which we need to reclaim. And then obviously we have this consolidation here. Kind of same thing we talked about last Wednesday, right? So last Wednesday night, excuse me, we talked about how going into Thursday, we have a pretty big uphill battle from the Bulls here, right? And so Thursday, the Bulls did their job. Okay, they took care of the 50-day and the 20-day EMA, and now we're just kind of hovering under this 20 MA. And really, my game plan here going forward this week is I want to keep an eye on, if we do continue to the upside, how do the Bulls react to this area here? Okay, because if the Bulls just straight up take out this area, then we're back on the upswing. We're back within our 18-month uptrend here. And excuse me, let me take care of that. There we go. And the bull run is on. Like nothing ever happened, right? It's just something you look back on and you're like, wow, look at that dip by opportunity. But right now, debt ceiling thing, again, once we get those details out, I think we're going to get pretty clear direction for the next week or two. Because after that, after this whole debt ceiling thing is revised, we pretty much have a month of not too significant of headlines or meetings that are planned until we hear from the FOMC again. So we have a solid 3-4 week span where we pretty much have a nice little opportunity to run before we go into earnings season in November, December. Right. So with that said, I'm keeping an eye on the downside, absolutely. But again, it all just comes down to how do these headlines play out? Because if we do get a big bearish catalyst, then absolutely I could see us pulling below this 50. And then this is where I want to feast, right? I want to start shorting down to the 100-day again. But there's no point in, from a technical perspective, shorting if all of a sudden we get a big bullish headline from this whole debt ceiling thing. All of a sudden they raise the debt ceiling and the plan goes through and everything's all well, no harm, no foul. Then all of a sudden there's really no big reasons for the downside to play out. Now all of a sudden we're keeping an eye on this level right here and we're waiting to hit the upside. Okay, so yes, if from a technical perspective, if we start to trickle down, I'm not going to start shorting unless that headline comes out that kind of gives the bears a little bit of gas, a little bit of something to push on, to where we could trickle down. Otherwise, I'm just kind of waiting to see, which way do we break here and what is the headline from Congress. So outside of that, pretty much same thing with Nasdaq. We have this little 2-day consolidation here following the reclaim of the 50-day, and it's pretty much same thing, right? Pretty similar to SPY. I'm waiting to see how we play out around this 379 spot. But until then, we definitely have room to run up to there before this is kind of the make or break moment where do the bulls have enough power to push through and all of a sudden we're back on the uptrend riding all-time highs. So the big news headlines this week is just, again, keeping an eye on what goes on with this whole debt ceiling thing. Does this turn into more of a financial crisis, or is it just something that, Congress kind of rides it out? I don't see it being something where the downside plays out, just because for everyone's sake, I mean, I don't see them putting another financial crisis on the country. just over a plan. But you never know. They could put their foot down and say, "No, we're tired of you guys spending, so we're going to put our foot down on this. Get rid of your bill," and that's where the downside can play out. So tomorrow is a game of wait and see. Let's see what Congress does, and let's see which way the chart starts to break, because we're still in a spot here where we could absolutely hit our head and retrace to the downside. It's 100% not out of the question right now. And so let me push this over here. I'm going to pull up the comments here, and let's start diving into some charts. Yeah, shorting, I mean, that's just basically playing the downside. If you're trading puts, or if you're shorting a stock, or futures, whatever the case is, shorting downside means you're opening a position to the downside, profiting off the downside, and then going long would be the opposite of that. You're riding the bullish sentiment. So that's the big sort of news headlines and areas to keep an eye on for the chart. Again, SPY, we're basically after that. If you take out the Evergrande scandal, right, that went on with China, we're pretty much in this same little consolidation channel. We're pretty much right back where we were last week heading into Monday, where, before this massive gap down and freak out by the market, we were in this little consolidation channel between the 20 and 50-day moving average. Once it came out, the Evergrande scandal and everything, not really as big a deal as was anticipated, didn't have that seismic global impact that the initial fear indicated may be the case. It was kind of consolidated to just being a China thing, and then they were able to pay off some of those debts once it was leaked that they had so much debt. So again, once we rode back up from that scandal there, we're pretty much right back where we started. And it's kind of the same thing now. Okay, yes, the bulls, they reclaimed that initial freak out, that initial massive fear, gap down, big sell off. We've cleared that. Okay, we're fine there. But now, you look at this. I mean, we can just chart this out real simple. It's pretty much as simple as this. We're waiting now in this tight channel here. Do the bulls reclaim and push, or do the bears want to push us down to the 100-day again? Okay, I mean, that's pretty much what this comes down to here. And you're right. It does. I agree with you, Gile. I agree with you. I think that the bull side plays out this week. Just because I don't really see a scenario where Congress lets this get crazy, where they let the downside play out by shutting down the economy. I think that with everything going on with inflation and with all the hard work that the Fed is doing, I think that that's a worst case scenario that nobody wants to come down to. And I think right now it's just kind of a staring contest between the Republicans and Democrats in Congress. And we're just waiting to see who's going to blink first. But again, it is also important to note that Democrats do outnumber the Republicans in Congress, so that we may all just be getting worried for nothing. And that's why I inevitably think that this whole thing is going to dissolve and end up not being a big deal. But it doesn't mean we can't count it out, right? There's still always that small possibility that something crazy happens from this meeting tomorrow. So just something to keep a close eye on. Again, here's the bull side levels. We're looking for that 447. We're looking for the 445. To the downside, we're looking to drop the 50-day again, start snapping below 440. But without that headline, I can't really hit the downside with conviction. The same thing here for the Qs. And so that's really the main thing to keep an eye on. Important to note here that, yeah, the Qs are lagging a little bit. Technology is slightly behind the S&P, so just keep a close eye on that if the lag gets a little more dramatic than it is right now. And with that, I'm pretty good on that, guys. From this point, let's just start looking at some individual names. So does anybody want to throw out some names? Can you give your opinion on F and 6? Random, I know. Well, yeah, you guys, by the way, when you throw out some tickers that you want me to take a look at, just give me, if you have any kind of context at all, is there earnings coming up, or is there, a news catalyst, or is it just something that you're in a position and you're curious my opinion on it? Just let me know so I can dive a little deeper into it. Let's take a look. Yeah, Ford is kind of at the same spot it was at a week ago. You saw that it was struggling to reclaim. We were in a little bit of a downtrend here. Now we've reclaimed that 100-day, closed above it, which is very important. So now for me, if I'm looking at Ford right now, I'm thinking to myself, um, and it looks like earnings was July 28th. So I'm assuming earnings is coming up pretty soon. So I would be interested if there's a run up off of, the run up heading into earnings. Maybe not earnings itself, but just the run up off of earnings. And without knowing any news catalyst behind Ford right now, I would definitely say tomorrow, if we start to push this 13.9, if we start to push Friday's highs, it looks like it could confirm the breakout. You want to wait for those highs because you see what happened the last time they went on a push, almost identical pattern. It rejected this. So you want to confirm with the second day above it. And so tomorrow, if we gap up and we start to push higher, then yeah, I would say that there's definitely room for a little run there. We got Santino in the building. What is that? Six Flags? Yep. Good old Six Flags. This is a bit trickier because the volume is kind of sporadic and you can see it's very, not a lot of trend here. You know what I mean? Very choppy price action. And so, from a technical perspective, it's in an upswing. It's reclaimed all of its supply. Now, I would just be worried. Again, I'd probably keep an eye on that 45.5 spot, 45.4, see if we push above that and start pushing higher and breaking out of this chart here. Because, if we go ahead and we just look at this strictly from a technical perspective, we were kind of riding this downtrend here where we were making lower highs and then you had the lower lows as well. So now we're kind of breaking out of that channel there. And now I think it's just a matter of, is there any news headlines around this thing? And do the bulls, is the volume there, right? That's the main question because the volume hasn't really been there the past couple of days. So when you see the volume dropping as the stock is breaking out, it's not a very healthy sign that it's a long-term breakout. It could be due for another pullback here. So I would just keep a very close eye on the volume with this setup. Let's see what you guys got going on here. S six based on COVID recovery, making people want to get out. Yeah, I'm not sure. I know because I lived in Pennsylvania for a while, and Six Flags was there in New Jersey. It was like an hour from us, so we went there a lot. But I would keep an eye on legislation around those areas and just keep an eye on how are they doing up there because that's one of those things that if you're playing it based off the news, you want to follow the news very close. What are the mandates? What do they look like up north? Is Six Flags in any other states or is it I think there might be one in California, right? Or is it just New Jersey? But those are the kind of things I'd keep an eye on. And then once you formulate, you do a little bit of research from the news. Now you go ahead and you look at your chart and you say, okay, we're breaking out of this downtrend here. I'm waiting for the volume to step back in. We have a nice spot here at 45.4. Now let me go ahead and take my entry and watch the news play out and see if we can have a nice run here. Even if we pull out a little bit more to that, we had that had that COVID sell off. Yeah, so I could at least see it running back up to that 51.5. They have 20 locations? I never knew that. Interesting. All right, what else we got here? Any big names? I do want to dive into Tesla. Again, that looked like a name that a lot of people were mentioning. Is it going to go down? SLI, MTN? I mean, you guys are throwing some names at me that I have never heard of, but I like that. I like learning new stocks. So let's see. I'm going to look at Tesla real quick just because I made a mental note that I wanted to go over it. I definitely want to look at some of these smaller names because I know for some of you guys with limited funds, it's really good to find these smaller names that end up breaking out pretty nice. So let's just take a look at Tesla and then we'll dive into some of those names. Hmm. I mean, one thing about Tesla, throughout all the ups and downs, they have maintained this really nice trend of holding on to their supply and just eking out higher highs as they kind of run up here. It hasn't been as volatile as it was early this year or even last year. I don't know if you guys remember. I mean, the one nice thing about Tesla is a lot more people can trade it lately because it's been less volatile. So if we pick our spot, we should get a nice premium spike here. I'm looking at this chart. If we can take out the most recent highs, 780, this actually looks like a pretty good setup. I'm not going to lie, this might be one of my main watches this week. Definitely, we're going to dive through some more charts though. But the nice thing about Tesla is, even if it's a little more expensive and you can just grab, let me zoom into this chart here. I want to make sure I get this, because with these expensive stocks, you have to really zoom in, because if you're slightly off, it could be $1 difference when you're charting. But nice thing with Tesla, if we grab one contract and catch the right move, you could turn 700-800 bucks into a couple thousand, within a day or two if you catch the right breakout. And so it looks like we're sitting right at about, I'm going to call it 781. All right. I always like to round up a little because it's always better to round up and it never hits it than to round down and then you hit it and then it reverses. So definitely going to go with that 781 round number. And so let's keep an eye on that tomorrow. Obviously, a pullback into the 20-day would be nice, but keep an eye on the flow. If we start seeing them buy 850, 900 strike, you start seeing the call buyers gobble up those 850 strike, 880, 890, 900. That's going to kind of give us that confirmation to go ahead and keep an eye on that breakout there. What else you guys got for me? Six Flags. Used to be the spot, man. Apple. Yes, that is an important one. SLI. All right, I've been hearing that a little bit here, so let's pull up SLI and then we'll go into Apple. All right, right off the bat, you guys got to give me some context because this is clearly one of those weird. Oh, and I see it in the name, and it's lithium. So obviously, with what was it? It just came across one of my financial news um, one of the financial news apps that I have. They were talking about lithium is in very high demand right now. The demand is far outpacing the supply. So obviously that's going to be bullish for lithium. And I guess you can see here that's why they've gone in it. Last week they went from 6.5 to 8.5. It's a pretty drastic spike where you could profit nice even just if you trade a couple hundred shares. Um, I mean, I guess maybe just watch for the breakout at $9, but you need another volume spike like this, right? Because if you have this volume here, you're just trading 20, 30 cent moves, which is fine if you're investing in it long term or if you're just trying to day trade or swing shares. But if you're trading options, you need to make sure that it is crazy volatile because otherwise you get stuck in this mess right here. You're just gonna get eaten up on theta, and you're probably gonna get in with high IV, and then the IV is gonna drop. You're gonna get IV crush. But I would say watch out for that $9 spot as long as the volume continues to be crazy like it was last Thursday. Has a low float and could go to 25 ATER. Let's take a look at Apple here. You guys, I was about to type out Apple. AAPL, duh. Yeah, kind of the same thing as SPY, to be honest. Would have been a nice opportunity to buy the dip at 141.5, but the problem is, you know, as we're sitting there and it's at 141.5, all you can think to yourself is, I don't want to try to catch a falling knife. I don't want to buy the dip at 141.5 because in the moment when it's right there, it could go to 139, it could go to 133. So it always sucks to kind of look back. Sometimes there's nothing wrong with taking a very small gamble on those bounce spots on the daily. But again, you don't want to try to like bounce it. Like let's say we tried to bounce it on the 50-day. Next thing you know, gaps down to the 100 and you're down 80%. Daily bounces are kind of tricky. They're one of those things that it feels a little bit more like gambling because you could always catch that gap. But as of right now, it's an uphill battle. just like SPY, we have to reclaim the 50 and 20-day averages. We need to reclaim this consolidation at 151.5. And I think I'm starting to get, what do you call it? Where you feel like you're just repeating the same things over and over. I'm starting to feel like I remember last Wednesday when we were live, I was talking about watch Apple at 151.5. I'm just going to write it there, and I'm probably going to put it in my trading notebook, and that's just all there is. Set a couple of alerts for 150, 151, and I'm just going to wait for the 151, and maybe we ride it back up to the mid 150s. Do straddles work well with Tesla? Yes, if you catch a volatile breakout. I just don't know that I would, because I just don't know that I would, because why not just have a lot of conviction in one side of the trade and write it out? Because like if we're watching this 781 breakout and we're looking at the chart, if we feel pretty good about it, why not just trade the upside and profit off it? And then if it pulls back, we hit our stop loss. But I don't know. I've never been a big fan of straddles, because it just kind of feels like you're trying to hedge against, like, it feels like you're trying to beat gambling. I don't know if this makes sense, but it's like, you're trying to save yourself no matter which way it breaks. But the downside to that is that you greatly limit your profit. So I don't know. I guess a little bit of my bias here is telling me, I'm not the biggest fan of straddles. The one time that I think straddles can work is when you're playing earnings. But again, if there's no volatility after earnings, then you get screwed on both sides of it. So you kind of need volatility to profit off of straddles. And I would just focus on one side for like a Tesla breakout. Just find a strategy you feel really good about, and just trade one side with conviction. Because when you're straddling it, I don't know, it just kind of feels like you don't have a lot of conviction one way or the other. Because if you had a lot of conviction one way, then why would you straddle it? That's just kind of my take on it. Look at it with I've never used Fibonacci's. I just never really been too big a fan of them. So if I used Fibonacci's, it wouldn't come across genuine, because I've just never really used them. You know what I mean? So I don't want to sit here and pretend that I know how to use them and give you a bunch of garbage. CEI, Amazon. Let's take a look. Amazon looks to have some relative strength here. We're filling the gap. We got the 20-day here before we come up on that consolidation. Again, that 3,500, 3,550. Those are the big areas to keep an eye on. But 3,450 could be a nice sneaky breakout entry, at least ride it up to 3,500. I don't hate that. That's definitely something I'm going to keep an eye on. What was the other one? CEI? Yeah, exactly. Fibonacci is maths. And I don't know. I think it's maybe more of a long-term thing too, like a swing trader thing. And I'm just like, I'm trying to read, like, I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole. Um, but I will say one of my good friends who is an amazing trader loves using Fibonacci. So I am by no means am I shitting on it. It absolutely works, just not in my strategy. CEI. Okay, so clearly something in the news here, Camber Energy. So I'm assuming it has something to do with electric vehicles, maybe lithium or something along those lines. I'm just going to take a guess based on the recent news. Obviously, the volume's there. So anytime you're trading a stock under $5 or $10, you need the volume to be there, right? Because you need to have volatility. You don't want to get IV crushed, don't want to get theta burned. So we have that. We're good on that. I think it's just a matter of riding the momentum on this one, because, yeah, I guess if you got a pullback, but I would just wait for the high breakout, because if the volume's there, it should keep riding. Um, and I would also say with like a $2 stock, just trade shares. Don't burn yourself with IV and theta. It just trade shares, and if it goes up a dollar, you make 50%, right? Because when you're trading the options, do they even have options? Let me pull up the options chain here. Let me do some maths, some quick maths, and we could see what would your risk reward be if you did options versus shares. They don't even have options, so there's no point, right? So we're good. Yeah, so just watch the 228 breakout, and I would say probably room up to $3 based on the most recent 70-cent move they put in. I'd say room for another 70-cent move, unless they go absolutely parabolic like they did back here. But outside of that, I'd say, yeah, probably trades up to this $3 area. You can see it keeps kind of rejecting this area, comes up, pulls back, comes up, pulls back, starting to come up, make its next run. So keep an eye on that 228 and that $3 spot there. To the moon. Oh yeah, ATER. I got you, Viraj. Let's see. Let me put this way and get the full screen up real quick. Yeah, the volume's coming in. Have to have volume with these low float, um, choppy, volatile stocks. You have to have the volume. Otherwise, you're wasting your time and probably wasting your money. I'd say keep an eye on that high breakout there of 21. Not only that, that's the 200-day reclaim as well. So you're reclaiming all of your supply. You're breaking out of the previous highs at 21. And yeah, probably room to 25, 26 there if we're following, even though we're in a downtrend, even though there's literally no volume around this point. That had to have been because it's showing like zero volume. Was this like like a merger deal or something that the volume's only just now showing up? Because that's literally like zero volume. I don't know, that's kind of weird. Um, Although it's only at 13 right now, so I don't know if you would wait for 21 because at that point it's already moved $8, $8.50. I mean, yeah, I mean the volume's there. Again, you just have to be careful with this 200-day moving average because it's been rejecting it a lot recently. Traded below it, couldn't get back up, traded below it, rejected. Now you're starting to see it swing upward, but I think on this one, unless I had a lot of conviction in it, then maybe I could ride it from 14.5 to 20. But if I'm thinking a little bit longer term, I think I want to wait for that 21 confirmation to go ahead and go long there. MTN. Wow, look at that candle. Jeez, I mean, talk about a nice breakout with the supply reclaim. I mean, last week you go ahead, you close above your supply. The next day you break above the previous day's high, take your entry at 316. Jeez. I mean, at this point, I would, with how volatile it's been and with the volume, I would really, really hate to buy it up here and it pulls back. I think I would try to get a pullback buy on this thing. Because again, I would just be nervous to buy the highs and it just pulls back $20, $30. I would see if maybe, even if we go to a shorter time frame to try to look for entry, maybe if we take entry at 333, if it can pull back to there, that's not a terrible spot. Let's see what the 5 minute looks like. Yeah, I would say that 336, 335, 327, somewhere in that 330 to 335 range, I think is a good value buy. Because you can even see in the upswing, it's been pulling up, pulling down, breaking out, pulling down, breaking out, pulling down, breaking out. So now I would just, even 340, if you want to be a little more antsy, I would prefer 335 to 330. 340 looks pretty aggressive. Um, and 340 is your 10-day as well. So it's not a terrible aggressive entry. I would say 340, be a little more patient and try to wait for 335. CHPT. Charge point. Didn't they used to be a different ticker? Didn't they used to trade under? Because I know I've traded charge point before, but I don't think it was CHPT. Um, I don't know, these EV, oh, it's a holdings, yeah. So they probably changed ticker because I know I've traded this thing before. Or maybe I'm thinking of Blink Energy. All of these EV companies, they all sort of just merge into one to me because they all kind of move together. Um, Obviously you're in the downtrend here, and this is another one of these names that you once the volume spikes in, it's gonna run, but you have to wait for that. Pretty crappy price action lately. I mean, very small candles. I would at least try to wait for the 20-day breakout, see if we can trade up through that 50 up to 25. And then from there you have room to the upside. But until then, it's stuck in a downtrend, and you have to keep in mind too that you have these lows that could get taken out, and it could get pretty aggressive at that point if you start taking out this area here. It could give even more confirmation to the downside, honestly. So I would just keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on how it responds to this 19.2 area. Make sure it defends that. If you're looking to short it, if it gets aggressive below 19.2, start taking entry at 19. I kind of like the downside for this name, to be honest with you. It definitely looks like it has a better chance of playing out than the upside. Now, with that said, if it uses this as hard support as it has 4 times on the daily chart earlier this year, back in March, April, then I would just wait to see, okay, we reclaim the 20. How do we react to the 50? Now we have pretty nice upside. So let that play out. What did you say, Flotilla? I've been waiting for an entry since 316. Dang, man. Yeah, yeah, no problem. What was that ticker again? MTN? Yeah, man. I mean, when you're looking at a daily chart and you're looking for a good swing entry, guys, this is my absolute favorite way to swing. You wait if obviously you have to be trading with supply demand trading strategy. But when you're looking at this chart, you're waiting for the reclaim of the last significant level of supply, which is your red line here, your 100-day moving average. And so when I'm looking for the breakout to confirm, because like we've done in the past, we could just hit our head here and move lower. So I see it start to spike up a little bit, and the volume is coming in. That's the key here, is the volume is trending with the stock. So that has piqued my interest. Now this is the 21st, so what was that, last Tuesday? We finally closed above it. Even though it's a red day, we gapped up and we closed above it. Okay, so now this is signaling to us that the bulls want to go on a run here, right? Because you can see anytime on this chart that we reclaim a key level of supply, we go on a run. It's just a layer of confirmation for us. And so now the next day we push above 317. For me, if I've been watching this stock, this is where I take entry long, 317. Because the day before we closed above it, and now a second day in a row, I use the second day to confirm, right? Because just in case we're not buying at a really weak spot where the stock's overextended and boom, it crashes back down. That second day where you push above the previous day's highs, now you're getting that confirmation that this is serious. The bulls have pretty solid control here. And so now you take entry. Now you can ride it up to your supply here at 350. So again, man, I know you watched it break out and you're pretty upset that it went on like a $40 move without you. I would, like I said, man, I would just wait for a little pullback here, see if you can catch 335, 340 if you truly believe in the upside on this stock. Otherwise, don't take entry up here because of FOMO, right? Because then you're really going to be kicking yourself if it reverses, because it's already gone on its run without you. XLE, the good sector for next week, had good inflow volume last week. Let's take a look. Aren't we supposed to get, guys, let me double check my economic calendar here. I think we're supposed to get some kind of economic data on consumer spending. Let's see. I don't know. I'll double check in a little bit. I don't want to sit here and keep you guys waiting, but yeah, I mean it's definitely on a nice run here. This is the energy sector, so obviously with all the buzz around EVs right now, it's absolutely a name to keep an eye on. To make sure that volume is there and that it's not starting to creep back down into this area. Because when we get volume like this is where we get a little bit of chop. You want to make sure that volume is nice and crisp. And again, we've reclaimed our supply on technically we reclaimed it last Thursday and confirmed last Friday. So now, wait, make sure it stays above that 100-day for you to take entry. And look, if you want to use your stop loss, I would just say if it starts to pull below this 100-day, depending on your risk tolerance, just stop out of it, right? There's no need to let yourself get burned all the way down here. If you want to take a shot on the upside, because it definitely looks like it's in the beginning phases of a nice bull run here. It's reclaimed all of its supply, looks ready to go. Definitely, I'll put it on my watch list and just keep a close eye on it, but not a bad setup at all. All right, guys. I think unless anybody has any last minute stocks you want to post for me to take a look at, I think I'm about done here. The ticker naked. It sounds fake, but check it out, please. I know what it is. It's the juice, right? Like the naked drinks. What is it? I thought it was NKD. Oh, it's NAKD. My bad. Naked Brand Group. Isn't this the drinks? I know. The only reason I know about this stock is because earlier this year, yep, this right here, everybody was talking about it back when GameStop was going crazy. I don't know, man. I mean, this is not a stock I personally would recommend trading. I'm going to tell you guys why. Because look at the volume and how it's almost non-existent, right? And so, yes, you can catch absurd moves. You can make 500, 1,000% if you catch the right move. But here's the issue. When you try to perfectly time the breakout when the volume steps in, and yes, we saw the volume step in last Friday, but nothing compared to the run it went on a couple months ago, right? And so when you try to perfectly catch that volume spike, sometimes you don't perfectly time it and you end up getting stuck in the trade or getting burned. I mean, you're going to be trading shares with something like this, so you don't have to worry about IV burn or theta burn, but at the same time you're tying up your funds. And so, I would just be very cautious, that these kind of penny stocks, it's very risky to trade because seconds count when it comes to entry, and you only have a couple days of crazy volume. So if you want to trade this thing, go for it. I would just tell you, make sure the volume is good. And when you start to see the volume die off, it means it's time to take profit. Or if you're not up on the trade, it means you were late to the trade. So just be mindful of that. Snap flow was looking good. Man, I haven't been able to trade Snap in a while. Um, Even though it's been moving nice. I mean, the past couple of days, but in general, it's just been this nasty chop ever since their last earnings. It's kind of been directionless. It's kind of been annoying, to be honest, because Snap is really fun to trade. And yeah, a lot of relative strength right now heading into earnings. You see that, even though the market as a whole is consolidating and there's a lot of names that are recovering from sell off, they're pushing all time highs here. Definitely a name to keep an eye on. Keep an eye on the flow. If the flow continues to pour in for within 2 to 3 weeks, you start seeing 85 to 90 strike price or even higher, keep a close eye on it. With a name that started to break out already, so we talked about that. Wait for the reclaim. They reclaimed 20, and then they had the second day for confirmation because you see they were just kind of trading around it. So you want the second day above the highs. Could have taken entry here at 76 and wrote it up. So now, like I talked about with MTN, wait for a pullback into 60-minute supply. See if we can't catch a pullback to about 80.4. right, and ride it back up through the highs. That would be my game plan with Snap right now. All right, guys. I think we're good. All right. So I'll put out an official watch list tomorrow. Keep an eye on that Congress news. Again, not anticipating anything too crazy, but I'll keep you guys updated. I'll let you guys know in the Titan Flow app. Put out my game plan tomorrow morning as we approach pre-market. Put out the official watch list, and let's have a great week. All right. I'll be live again Wednesday, so definitely be sure to tune into that, and let's kill it tomorrow, guys. Have a good night, everybody.